All right, welcome back. It's time for your OU practice report this morning. And before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button as you want to make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on so you'll get updated on all these videos. So, guys, today, full pads for the first time. And, or it was yesterday, I mean, but full pads for the first time. And we saw a few highlights on Twitter from OU football, especially the Gavin Freeman highlight. I'm sure everybody's seen it, where he leaped pretty high. Obviously, I think that was Kip Lewis, guys, held off a little bit because he could have really just destroyed him, I think.
He hurdled Key Lawrence, I believe, and then Kip Lewis could have smacked him, but he didn't. And obviously, it's practice, so you don't want to hit anyone too hard to try and cause an injury. But obviously, we've heard all summer. We heard it in the spring. We've heard it in fall camp. Gavin Freeman, Gavin Freeman, Gavin Freeman. That's been the name. He's been the guy, Brent Venables said it, that has stood out to everyone. So I think there's now the Sooner fans are starting to get bought into the Gavin Freeman hype. It's just interesting to see how him and Drake Stoops will split the snaps in the slot, with obviously Gavin Freeman getting so much plays and Drake Stoops being the veteran leader on this team. But I think that we will see a lot of usage from Freeman this morning. And guys, this morning I was able to walk outside and it felt like football season. It smells like football season. It smells like the weather. So football's back in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with like the Gavin Freeman play, yes, I mean Kip Lewis could have lit him up. Yes, I mean Key Lawrence probably could have like grabbed him or something was in the air, but nonetheless, that dude got up and that's impressive. I don't care if people are laying off or whatever. He got up and he made a play. And I think, a lot of people like BV Jackson, you mentioned BV's talks high praise of him. I think that just kind of shows the explosiveness that he has as an athlete. He's not just like a walk-on wide receiver as people might think of him, or a smaller wide receiver that people might think of him. This dude he's a baller, and I think he showed that just by showcasing his athleticism on that play.
And guys, I always like to watch Rudy right before the start of the football season, a little family tradition we do here at the Lusk House, but he's got a little bit of that in him. And what I mean is he's the guy that, you watch play and you're like, dude, this guy's going extra. Like, chill out. That's who Gavin Freeman is. It's the mentality he's had as being a walk-on. That's his mentality. He's going to be extra, and he's earned his way onto the field. I mean, period.
Yeah, but gone are the days of small receivers not making the NFL. I mean, guys, Cooper Kupp, dominant NFL receiver, dominant.
He is a little bit on the bigger side, honestly.
You also talk about guys like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and I mean, you could go back to Wes Welker, obviously.
That's who he reminds me of.
Julian Edelman. I mean, there's been a bunch of guys that have made careers in the NFL. And what we heard in the offseason with the way he did in the weight room, guys, the sky's the limit for Gavin Freeman.
Yeah. He is the guy that, I mean, you just see this highlight, obviously, from yesterday, and then his first touch in a Sooner uniform. Like, he's a human highlight reel, and he's not the guy. You look in that wide receiver room, and you're not going to pick out Gavin Freeman as, okay, that's going to be the guy that's going to make all these plays. You would think probably Nick Anderson, and Freeman just does it again and again. He has that just walk-on mentality, and with all the talks of him in the weight room, we're starting to get into a point of where Gavin Freeman could absolutely be an NFL player, like, with how his work ethic, everything that's said about him. That's what NFL scouts are looking for.
Yeah, and with Freeman, to me, it's also like thinking about it from the perspective of like looking at the future. Like Drake Stoops is probably one of the best mentors you can have as a wide receiver. Like, they're gonna play similar positions, and I mean, yeah, Jackson, you mentioned how it's gonna be interesting to see how they split reps. That will be interesting. But guys, Drake Stoops is not back next year. And now you're setting yourself up in a position to have Gavin Freeman be the guy at slot in his junior year, after being behind Drake Stoops for 2 seasons. I just think you got to feel great about what Gavin Freeman is going to bring to the table, not only this year, but also in the future as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, Drake Stoops isn't not talented. I mean, think of some of the plays last year Drake Stoops made, guys. diving at the pylon. And one thing that I think Gavin Freeman, and just my opinion, is where he's not going to be as strong as Drake Stoops is. Drake Stoops is a phenomenal blocker down the field. Absolute phenomenal blocker. That's probably the most improved area that probably Gavin Freeman, because all the other things he can do, we know it. I just don't know that he's Drake Stoops level blocking yet.
Yeah, and you talk about the opportunity that Freeman has this year to really prove his worth, knowing that Stoops, who's such a valuable player that OU has in the locker room, he has the OU culture instilled in him. He stayed around for 6 years, was a walk-on. Gavin Freeman was a walk-on. They both have that mindset. They know what it takes to be successful. And they both just will outwork anyone on the team. Like, I think Brent Venables said, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said that Jerry Schmidt could just go on and on and on about Gavin Freeman. And if Jerry Schmidt can do that, then you've run the highest of the highest. And I know Drake Stoops has even called out Gavin Freeman for really just the work he's put in, how much he's willing to sit back and listen, and how much film he's really watching, and doing all these things, these small things that are going to turn him into an elite wide receiver one day.
The Gavin Freeman, Drake Stoops storyline is really, in my opinion, one of the coolest storylines in this era of like a 6-year senior. I mean, if you ask Gavin Freeman who his favorite football player is, the answer is Drake Stoops.
Yep.
The guy that's right above him on the depth chart. He's looked up to him now for 6 years. He's on the same team as him. He's able – it's just such a cool storyline for those two, the mentor and the mentee, like to be able to have that chemistry that they have. Obviously, Freeman just trying to live out what Drake Stoops did at OU, and he's doing it already.
Yeah, one more. I got a question for all you guys before we maybe move on from Gavin Freeman. How many times this year will Gavin Freeman catch a pass and the Sooners crowd yell Stoops? Because that happened last year against Kansas when Freeman caught a pass. I think they were actually wearing the Unity uniforms.
Yeah,
might be why that happened.
It's probably going to happen a lot. He's 82. Stoops is 12. People are going to see the 2. The 8 at times isn't as easy to see. And they're the same build. I mean, they're really kind of
I think it may help now that Freeman has the arm sleeve tattoo, that may be able to help tell some difference. But like, if you were just the average fan and like you didn't know numbers or anything, and if you just saw that they both are smaller slot receiver guys, they both kind of play the same way, it would be easy to get them confused.
Are you talking about the student section, Jackson?
What?
You're talking about the
basically.
student section? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, and Gavin, like you mentioned, Hunter, the way that Gavin Freeman looks up to Drake Stoops, and I think also kudos to Drake Stoops, because I'm not saying he's going to be a coach in the future, but I promise you, he comes through naturally with his family upbringing and things, and just the coaching and I can see him transitioning in that. I don't know what his future holds, but what better way to start than kind of coaching right now?
I think it will be a little ways away for him. I think he definitely has a chance to make a run on an NFL roster. But his twin brother Isaac's already coaching. He's been coaching high school football now for, I think, 5 years. He played, I think he did the freshman year as a walk-on and then transitioned into coaching. So it's definitely something that's going to happen for Drake Stoops. And seeing how he, like you mentioned, how he's handled this Gavin Freeman situation, like you can tell he will be the next great Stoops coach. I mean, that's just what the family is.
Yeah. And so, hey, before we move to the defensive side of the ball, Brody, do you have something else offensively you were going to say?
Yeah, I mean, one of the more interesting topics to me, just hearing whether it be on the Ref or the Oklahoma Breakdown podcast, which has great information. If you haven't already, probably go listen to that. But the Caleb Hicks hype is certainly real. And, we've talked all on this podcast about how could see who's it going to be, Javonte Barnes or Gavin Sawchuk. But I think I think Caleb Hicks is going to be in there. And just hearing people who be at practices saying, yeah, Hicks has looked like the best running back out there. And that's substantial to me because, again, you never know how things are going to work out with injuries. Like, Barnes missed time in the spring. So maybe you do have injuries. At least you're going to feel really good about having Caleb Hicks back there, Reggie Pearson compared him to Jonathan Taylor. So, and that dude's built too.
That was interesting. That whole thing started. I saw the Reggie Pearson, what his thoughts on him. Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs in the NFL. And Pearson has seen talent. He's now a 5th-year senior, I believe. He was at Wisconsin.
Yeah, 5th year, I think.
Now at MU. He knows talent. So to get that praise from Reggie Pearson is huge for Caleb Hicks. And then now you have Teddy Lehman and Gabe Eichert saying, pretty much echoing the same thing about how good Hicks. I think the comment from Teddy was, on like you can't really tell which one is the freshman out of the group.
He said, like, if you're looking at them, you would not think zero is the freshman.
Yeah.
Right. And I will say that, sorry, Jackson, just one thing here. One thing that I think is very interesting with the running backs. I mean, I'm not one who thinks Caleb Hicks is starting over Barnes and Sawchuk. I don't think that's even remotely possible, although it does sound like he's turning eyes and turning heads quickly. But I'm interested because we didn't see any of these three really much besides Barnes. The whole fumble, the turnover thing is going to be a major deal here. You know, if one of these guys starts coughing it up early, and we don't know, the ball security with these guys. Eric Gray was pretty phenomenal. Before that, Kennedy Brooks was the best maybe ever.
I don't think he ever fumbled once in his career.
Ball security is going to be massive. So if one of these guys fumbles it and shows that they don't have very good ball security, that's going to be a determining factor. And I think that's an interesting thing to watch early on.
You're exactly right, because you go back to the year that Oklahoma played Ohio State in the bowl game. I mean, like Abdul Adams was the number one running back heading to that game, but that was a crowded backfield that year because you had Trey Sermon and Rodney Anderson. Then Abdul Adams fumbles that game, and all of a sudden he didn't get his spot back. So, I mean, I think that's interesting, and I also think the pass blocking aspect is going to be another determining factor because that's a big thing for DeMarco. So, especially when you got, Marcus Major's there too. You got a lot of guys in that room. You can't really afford to make too many costly errors like fumbling the ball or, missing a pass blocking assignment.
And I think something that Hunter said was that none of these guys look like freshmen. I mean, Jason, Jeremy, that's what we talked about in the last practice report we did. These guys, when they get in the weight room with Schmitty, you cannot tell who's the freshman and who's the 6th-year senior, really, just because of the transformations they get. And obviously, there's some guys that look like grown men when you look at like a Rondell Bothroyd or a Dejon Terry because they have so much experience in these college weight rooms. But it's like – just the amount of depth that there is in the running back room, that really I love the word, Brent Venables loves the word competitive depth. It's so true. There's so much competitive depth at all the positions on the team. And it's going to lead to a more, I would say a more of a case when the cream will rise to the crop, really, because the best of the best will emerge. And so it's just that, in the running back room, who is running back 3? Is it Caleb Hicks or is it Marcus Major or is it Tawee Walker? Like we don't know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but just based on it's so early that so many things can change. But Jeremy, I think you had a great point. If someone has fumble issues, like Sawchuk fumbled in the bowl game. I know that was his first game ever starting in that bowl game, so that doesn't really. I'll give exception to that. But like, let's say a Sawchuk has fumble issues, I wouldn't be shocked if we see a guy like Caleb Hicks maybe get some more run.
It's also coming out of the backfield, catching the ball. We don't know really. We know Barnes ran the wheel route a couple times, and there's some other examples. But these guys out of the backfield, it's going to be interesting. But going back to what you said about these guys don't look like freshmen, that's also a testament, Jackson, to the high school weight rooms and the strength and conditioning programs that have changed in high school, honestly, because these guys are coming in looking different. It's not just Schmitty. Schmitty's done a great job, but look at some of the guys that are coming in next year, possibly the year after, and they don't look like high school football players.
Yeah. And one more thing with the running backs, too. It's like, your first 3 games are Arkansas State, SMU, and Tulsa. And no knock on any of those teams, but that's going to give you opportunities. And even like Cincinnati, you would hope that you can rotate some guys in that game, because it's one thing to see it in practice. And this is a thing we've talked about with like Marcus Major, Justin Harrington. It's another thing to see them do it in the game. So I think just getting all those guys rotated into the game to see what they do in game action in those first couple games will be huge.
Yeah. Moving over to the defense, guys, one thing from the practice, we all saw the mic'd up section with Danny Stutzman, the linebackers there. And Danny Stutzman, he's, to me, if I had to point to one guy who's the leader of the whole team, I'm going to say Danny Stutzman.
Yeah.
And I would even pick him over Dylan Gabriel, in my opinion.
We heard
I
it
think
all.
he's the leader of this team.
Yeah, and as Hunter and Jason, as you were saying, that you think that Stutzman is the leader of this whole team. I do think that. And you talk about just the evolution of Stutzman from the moment Brent Venables got on to really came to Oklahoma. I believe he asked him, like, are you ever going to watch film during the spring or some of last year? And really that flipped on a switch for Stutzman. And I think that you've seen just the evolution and just the development. You talk about a guy that Brent Venables has gotten his hands and his paws all over. That's Danny Stutzman. Now, Stutzman, his ceiling is a Butkus Award finalist this year, but I think he's going to be a first-team All Big 12 guy, and I believe he will lead. He led the team in tackles last year as well, correct?
He led the conference in tackles, right?
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
I think he has a chance to lead the conference in tackles again. And I also think that just with more experience, a more fundamentally sound player, and just the development under Brent Venables, we'll have a chance to turn Danny Stutzman into an NFL draft pick.
Yeah, the one thing the Brent Venables defense needs is that leader. And Stutzman was that guy talked about all offseason. And yesterday was the first day of full packs. And we see it from that first day. The mic'd up video. Stutzman was running everything with the linebackers, leadership wise, like in drills, just kind of coaching up the guys. And that's what they need. The maturity level from Stutzman has really like skyrocketed. You know, we had everyone knows about the Teddy Lehman comments, which he talked to Teddy about. He was like that helped him to kind of get criticized from someone, his idol, to kind of say that and say he needs to get better. And you can see Stutzman has finally, football is 100%. That's what Danny Stutzman is all about now.
Yeah. And there's the whole argument of nature versus nurture. And, you know, it's really across the board on many, many variables and many avenues, but that's kind of what's happened here with Danny Stutzman. He's a combination of natural talent, along with being nurtured by Venables and the staff. It's not like the guy hasn't paid his dues. I mean, he was kind of through the ringer there, guys. Yeah. So for me, as a teammate, if I was a teammate of his, I have even more respect for the guy and just what he is now as to what he was a year ago. And I think they can see that, and they can see the nurturing process and just the natural gifted ability the guy has to lead. And the combination of that makes this guy just an unbelievable leader for this defense.
Yeah, and I think also with Stutzman's ability to lead, you also look at the other guys in the linebacker room, right? You have Connor Neer, who transferred in over the summer. You have Kobe McKenzie. You have Jaron Kanik. You have Kip Lewis. You have the super talented trio of freshmen that came in as well. So it's just who is going to start alongside Stutzman. I expect it to be Kanik. I do. I think really Kanik, it seems like from some things that we've been hearing, has really a switch to starting to flip with him, especially over this fall, knowing the playbook throughout fall camp. Connor Neer is another guy who has lots of experience. I know it's not at the Division I level, but it's college football experience. Like, experience is super valuable because no one else has started a college football game, I believe, except Connor Neer and Danny Stutzman, if I'm correct on that. So you talk about there's just not being much experience. And can a guy like Kobe McKenzie finally step into that role that we're expecting him? Okay, he may not start, but he can be someone that can contribute. So I think it's kind of just an interesting thing to watch is who's going to start alongside Stutzman.
Who do you guys see? Because I agree, Stutzman and Canick.
Canick.
That's what I'm going with.
And then I think you'll see Kip and Kobe behind them too, potentially even Lou.
Yeah, and Connor Neer's interesting. Ferris State is a very good program. The things that are said about him are very high. Again, it's just Jaron Canick has this just I don't even know how to describe it. There's something there with it, and BV's talked about it a lot. Like
He's a freak. That's
yeah,
what he is.
he's like he's never played the position before. Like that's what's holding him back is he's having to learn this position. So it's just like once it all clicks for Jaron Canick, like it's going to be fun. And just the linebacker room as a whole, the depth they have, the competitive depth, all the young guys. And I truly think Danny Stutzman is the best leader they could possibly have because he knows it all, and he's just probably the most likable guy on the team.
Well, and I have nothing to back this up, just stuff like based off what I've seen, say on Twitter or Instagram. Danny Stutzman kind of seems to have taken Jaron Canick like under his wing. Yeah. They seem to be really close, and I think that's great just to have your two backers have a great relationship beside each other where they can bounce stuff off each other about the defense and all that.
I believe BV kind of called it almost like two peas in a pod with those two. Like, they're everywhere together. I believe they live together. I know the Fruit Ninja.
Yes.
On Instagram and Twitter at their house. So the relationship between those two is definitely there. And I really think that's going to be something that kind of gives Jaron Canick that edge compared to the other guys in the linebacker room looking for that starting job. Is chemistry is going to matter with Danny Stutzman. And obviously these other guys, even if they don't win the starting job, that doesn't mean they're not going to play. This isn't last year. You're not going to have, say, for this year, Danny Stutzman, Jaron Canick starting, and they're both playing over 100 snaps a game. That's not happening again. They're not going to lead the conference in snaps played. After last year, we finally have that depth to where they can get moved in and out plenty.
If you've seen Mighty Ducks, you guys seen Mighty Ducks?
Yeah.
Remember Fulton? Remember the Bash Brothers or whatever they were called? That's Stutzman and Canick. That's who I picture these two guys, dude. And they're going to just annihilate people on the defensive side. So, yeah, anything else stand out, guys?
I mean, I would say another thing that we're watching for is just the Cheetah position as well. I know that's just such a common talk, such a common theme, and we heard that it's really been between Deshaun McCullough and Justin Harrington to start. It's been like that since the spring. Brody Hunter, I don't know if you guys can maybe speak upon maybe a little bit more of that, but it's just an interesting battle to watch because we know that they both have praised each other. Whether that's one saying that that just he's an athletic freak, or the other saying that he just can do things that aren't normal. We've heard them say those things about each other. So it truly is a good competition. I think it's also nice to know that Justin Harrington too is finally starting to pick things up, that we can see him on the field, because he was the number one defensive back transfer out of JUCO a couple years to Oklahoma. So he is an uber talented player, an athletic freak. And I think that when you just get the mix of McCullough, Harrington, who can do so many different things, but they both are just super long and athletic. And I think when you also have the ability to put in a guy like a Reggie Pearson or Peyton Bowen alongside them and switch things up, give teams different looks, it's just going to allow for this defense to be more comfortable. And that also tells me that the comfortability is there for so many players now, because they just know that things, I guess, or that I would just say they know they're more confident in what's going on, truly.
Yeah, me personally, I would say, in my opinion, Deshaun McCullough should get the nod at Cheetah. But what I do like is that regardless of who gets the starting nod there, they're both going to be very involved in this defense in one way or the other, whether it be at Cheetah or whether it be somewhere else. These guys are not going to be kept off the field. They're going to play one way or another.
Yeah, and you guys need to stop cheating yourself and subscribe to this channel, Sooner Surge. We will continue to provide, I guess you could call these just kind of reviews of what we've seen of what's going on at practice, as we don't have anyone there at practice, but it's just good to talk about kind of what we're seeing, what's happening there within the program. And yeah, make sure you're subscribed, turn on your notifications. We are exactly, I guess you could say, 23 days away. That's, speaking of linebackers, Deshaun White, days away. Or we can go Alan Patrick. If you guys remember that guy, a little running back, played with Paul Thompson. So, guys, we'll get at this again tomorrow. Till next time, Boomer.
Boomer.